Canada's Competition Bureau. It's launching a study focused on growing concerns around airline prices and quality.
The Bureau says the study will focus on the state of competition between carriers, barriers to entry and growth in the market, as well as obstacles for travelers looking to make informed choices. And the Competition Bureau's final report is expected to be released in June 2025. So for a closer look at this, we're joined live by Gabor Lukacs, president of Air Passenger Rights. Good to be with you, Gabor. Thank you for joining us. Look, it's no secret that Canadians are frustrated with their airline. Some feel as if the prices are going up and the quality is plummeting. What do you think the study is actually going to accomplish?
I certainly have a greatest respect for the Competition Bureau. At the same time, I have some concerns when I'm looking at the terms of reference that perhaps it doesn't go far enough. I feel that also some airport governance issues should be looked at, and they cannot be looked. You cannot talk about competition within the airline sector in a manner that is divorced from the airports, which is the main facility being used. I don't necessarily want to get into airport ownership issues, but airport governance is an important aspect that should be addressed. Another issue that is sorely missing, and I hope perhaps it will come out in the process, is the lack of available statistical data in Canada. When you look across the border in the U.S., there's a treasure trove of statistics on airline operations within the U.S. and every route, how many passengers they transport, what type of fares they have. Very, very detailed, nuanced data that can be used by economists, by researchers to do research. None of that is available in Canada. Another concern I'm looking at in term of reference is specific reference to one airline, Port Airlines, which makes one wonder whether the intent is somehow to help one airline as opposed to help Canadian consumers. I'm not saying it is going to happen. It is just that perhaps those terms of reference should have been drafted a bit more carefully. What I expect the intent is eventually for governments to use whatever report is coming out as a justification for making some changes. One change that I believe would be very important to do is to open up Canada's domestic market for more international carriers who are already flying to Canada. It's also called cabotage, to allow them to also transport passengers within Canada. I hope and expect that issue is going to be addressed somehow in this study. And perhaps what is needed from a government's perspective is to get the kind of political support backing for a major policy change, which is long overdue in Canada, to break up the Air Canada wedge duopoly.
Gabor, talk about the challenge in terms of, I guess, upgrading airline quality when you don't have really a lot of competition.
Well, obviously, if you have insufficient or inadequate competition, then the odds are that the two airlines will more try to compete in terms of race to the bottom, who can offer the least service for the same price, as opposed to improving services. But let's also understand that just by having more competitors, it will not automatically improve the quality of service. It may improve prices, lower prices somewhat, but for quality of service, what is needed is clear and enforced regulations that protect consumers, which all players, all competitors have to abide by, which are being enforced against our competitors equally. That is not the situation currently in Canada. So perhaps Canadians may get disappointed if they are hoping to also get better service. The best outcome I could see, the ideal outcome from this study and some policy change that ensues from this, is perhaps somewhat lower prices. But for changing quality of service, Canadians need to go to their MPs and tell them, we want more passenger protection, we want more government regulation, not about how the airlines operate, but rather about standards of treatment, standards of service, which the government is currently not enforcing, even though they may exist in the law books. And then what exists in the law books is nowhere near the European Union's gold standard.
And that passenger feedback obviously means so much to airlines. And on that note, we know that the number of passenger complaints lodged with the country's transport regulator has now reached a new high, topping about 72,000. Gabor, what do you think that says about how people are feeling about travel in this country?
Well, how people feel is less of a concern. The greater concern is that the regulator is dysfunctional. People could feel very bad or very good, but we need to have a regulatory regime which is enforceable, which works properly, and we need to have a regulator and a government which is willing to enforce the laws as written. We don't have any of those. their passenger protection regulations are fundamentally flawed. We have seen it. That's why we have so many complaints. And we have such a backlog because they're so unreasonably complicated that it takes an enormous amount of time to decide each individual complaint, while in Europe it just takes a couple of minutes.
Gabor Lukacs, president of Air Passenger Rights, thanks so much for your perspective tonight. Really appreciate this.
All right, thanks, Gabor. This is Toronto.